Welcome to the guide on how to use an RPG in ninjaio. So just to give you a general overview of the video, first I'm going to talk about when to shoot with an RPG, since timing your shots with this weapon is super important, because if you don't time your shots, they can actually get completely blocked and negated, or they can also be dodged pretty easily. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about aiming with an RPG. And in the last section, I'll talk about how to use the RPG against people who are camping or in sandbags. Now, before we actually start the video, I just want to mention something for the super new players. So to shoot the RPG, you just need to be crouched or in a lying down position. Otherwise, the weapon won't shoot. So you can do this by holding down the down arrow key or pressing the X button on your keyboard to lie down. And that's just like the general control stuff, so you're not confused throughout the video. So with that out of the way, let's move into the first section. Now, obviously, the reload time on the RPG is pretty long, especially if you're comparing it to the other weapons in the game. And since you need to be crouched or laying down to use it, it means it takes a lot more setup than the other weapons before you can shoot. So because of this, RPGs are usually best used in, and I'm saying best used because you can use them in larger lobbies as well, but I'm just saying this is where they are the most efficient in most cases. So usually RPGs are what you're going to want to use in small lobbies, 1v1s, or if you're having a lot of trouble against a particular camper. It's more of like a quality over quantity kind of weapon, if that makes sense. So it's more useful when the smaller the lobby is, the more useful an RPG is. And you can make it work in big lobbies, but it's just a lot less efficient because of the reload time, and you're not going to have as much time between fights in large lobbies. On the topic of setup, after you finish a fight where you just used your RPG, since it takes quite a while to reload, you're definitely going to want to reload it as soon as you're in a safe spot and the fight you were just in is done. Anyone who uses an RPG a lot can tell you I used to use an RPG all the time, and it is the worst feeling ever when you swap to your RPG in the middle of a fight, and then it's you're out of ammo, and now you don't have time to swap back to your other weapon, and you're basically dead. So you need to make sure you're set up before going into your next battle, basically. And you don't really need to keep it. You need to keep that in mind with every weapon, but it's especially true for the RPG since the reload time's so long. Something that's really, really important to talk about when we're speaking about RPGs is figuring out how to angle your RPG shots. You need to be really good at sort of I don't want to use the word calculating because it's sort of more of a feeling, but you need to get really good at making angled shots with your RPG. To explain that, and the reason for that, RPG shots are actually blocked by rapid fire weapons, flamethrowers, basically any kind of damage that hits your RPG can block it. Now, I don't know if this is going to be changed in the future or stay as it is forever. So if you're watching this video, I don't know, 20 years in the future, and RPG shots don't get blocked anymore, you can just skip this section. To dive into a little bit more detail about this, the main weapons you need to worry about as an RPG user are rapid fire and AoE type weapons. So as an example of, say, a rapid fire weapon, maybe the laser gun or something like the link gun, and as an AoE weapon, something like the flamethrower. Those kinds of weapons that can sort of cover a lot of area at once are going to be blocking your shots a lot. The shotgun, oh my goodness, the shotgun is, you can ask any RPG user, the shotgun recently has been such a pain for people who use the RPG. So to make sure your RPG shot does not get blocked, try to fire your weapon either before your enemy has started shooting, once they're out of ammo, or more usually what you'll do is you need to try and shoot at them at an angle that their bullets aren't in. So that's the angles we were talking about earlier. So for example, if they are shooting in a straight line, you might be able to quickly fly above to a higher angle, then shoot down at them and avoid their bullets. And the RPG moves pretty quickly, so as long as you're at a sort of medium-ish distance, you should be able to get them without too much trouble doing this. to do this, you can just like flip over them, lie down really quick, and then take your shot. The reason I'm putting this section first is because I've really noticed that, especially for newer players trying to use the RPG, this sort of like shot angling is very, very difficult for them. So it's going to be really, really easy. Trust me, once you get the hang of it, like it becomes very easy. But you need to sort of like go through that rough patch in the start, just getting your RPG shots blocked. But eventually you'll get the feel for making those angled shots, and you're not going to have as much trouble with rapid fire as you do right now. While you can, just try to survive until they're out of ammo, then take your shot. I wouldn't recommend taking damage on purpose, because like you're sort of underestimating your enemy. You don't know if they've got some throwables stashed away, if they're going to hit all headshots, so like if you can't get a shot off from another angle and you can't like avoid the damage through a sandbag or something, a lot of the times you're going to be better off just swapping to another weapon and then swapping back after the fight's done. An RPG will almost always be a one-shot weapon as long as you can get a direct hit, pretty much anywhere. So usually you're going to want to sort of aim for like the middle of your target. There is a bit of an arc with the RPG that you need to keep in mind while you're taking your shots, but it's not as severe as, say, a weapon like the M79, so it shouldn't be too difficult to get the hang of. You need to keep in mind that you will be making a lot of your shots mid-air with an RPG to get those angles I was talking about earlier, so your shots don't get blocked. And because of that, if you're trying to get good at, really good at using an RPG as your secondary weapon for 1v1, small lobbies, or whatever it is, you're going to need to get good at making mid-air RPG shots, because right now it is really essential that you can do that. So what I'd recommend doing if you're struggling a lot with the little bit of the RPG arc combined with mid-air shots is I would just join like a small lobby or make your own lobby, and then like just honestly just do some target practice, like practice flipping into the air and just hitting your shots. So maybe target a sandbag or a grenade box or something. The RPG's arc isn't that severe, so it shouldn't take too long to get the hang of. Like at a close distance and a medium distance especially, it's really not severe. The arc doesn't really show itself unless you're looking at longer distances. Because of that fact, if you are trying to do this sort of practice strategy, I guess, what I would do is I would start really close to the sandbag or grenade box or whatever you're targeting, and make those mid-air shots really nice and close, then just slowly get further and further back until you're comfortable using it in a match and you feel good about your skill with it. So really, to aim with the RPG, I mean, you have to be able to use your flight well also, because you need to be able to control your distance and control what angle you're at, like we were talking about earlier, and you can't do that unless you can use your flight well. You need to obviously work on making shots from a crouched position as well, but that's not the major point here. The major point is using your flight well, because if you're in the proper angle, making a crouch shot isn't that hard. If you're struggling a lot with your flight, I did a video tutorial on that, so I'll leave a link in the description. I don't know if it'll be super helpful in this scenario, but I don't know, maybe it'll help a little bit. Now, before we move into the next section, I just want to briefly talk about aiming above your target when you're trying to make a shot at someone really far away. So depending on how your opponent is moving and their distance, sometimes when you're using an RPG, since it doesn't hit instantly, you'll need to sort of aim above your target to get your shot to hit, or sometimes even below, but usually above. Generally, this is, like I was saying earlier, only an issue at further distances. It's not something you need to do like close up or at a medium range, really. The reason I'm only covering this topic of aiming above your target's head at far distances briefly is because really there's not that much to say about it. Like, you can't be doing trigonometry or algebra in the middle of a match. Like, it needs to be intuition. You need to sort of see your target and know pretty naturally, like, how far above them am I going to need to aim. Like, you need to be able to account for the arc really well, and that's not something that can just be like, I can't just tell you like account for the arc. Why aren't you accounting for the arc? Like, you can't just be told do it and then do it. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically this is something that has to come through experience. So just focus on getting good at the RPG and its arc at close to medium ranges, which is pretty easy, and then naturally you'll slowly get better at making shots from further and further distances until you can arc your shots and you'll know how much to aim above your enemy and all that cool stuff. So this is something here that has to come from experience. Okay, now let's move on to the next section. In this section, I'm going to be talking about how to use RPGs against sandbags. So when RPGs are used well, like, they go pretty quick, they do a lot of damage, and they can, as long as you hit the right spot, they can rip through sandbags. Like, they're sort of like a camper's worst enemy if they're used properly. But to use an RPG against someone camping in a sandbag, you have to, like, make your shots in a very particular way. Otherwise, experienced campers can just find ways to sort of shrug your shots off or only take half the damage and stuff like that. So the biggest thing is you're going to want to try and make sure your shot lands on top of the sandbag and not in the front of the sandbag or on the rear or wherever. Because if it's in the front or on the back, it's really easy for campers to just dodge. Like, I've done this so many times. Like, it's very, very easy to dodge if you hit the front or back of a sandbag. Or even, like, if it's like the front corner or the back corner, like, you want to really get good at hitting the center of a sandbag's top, if that makes sense. So this usually means that you'll need to get above your target, obviously. But the thing is, it's easier said than done, because during all this, you need to keep a healthy distance away from the sandbag or you're going to get sniped before you can take your shot. Sometimes, like, this can be very difficult to do against experienced campers. And, you know, that's why against, like, very good campers, lots of players will just use rapid fire nowadays and just, like, spam over the sandbag top because it's easier than hitting an RPG. But if you can use the RPG really well, like, it's very, very good. Now, to quickly tie everything back together and just summarize the video, the first thing you're going to want to be able to do with an RPG is you need to learn how to use your flight really well to get in the angles you need. And you really do need the angles or your shots will be blocked nowadays. The next thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to learn to aim well with your RPGs and get a feel for the arc and how it works just vaguely. You know, it might not be super important at medium to close ranges, but once you get to further ranges, you need to sort of factor it in. The last thing we talked about is when you're fighting against campers, keep a healthy distance from their sandbags and hit the sandbag tops. And also make sure you're watching what the camper is doing, because, like, if they are just gonna, like, book it as soon as you shoot your RPG, like, you need to be prepared to swap to your next weapon. Like, if you're going against a good camper, you sort of need, like, backup plans. They're like, okay, I'm gonna shoot this RPG at their sandbag, and if they dodge it, I'm gonna swap to my secondary. And that's not something you think about. It's just like, I don't know, it's like subconscious backup plans. I don't know how to describe that, but yeah, so again, just be careful not to get too close to the sandbags or move too predictably, or you're going to get sniped before you take your shots. You need to move quickly, keep a healthy distance, and be accurate. And, like, some people will be like, well, Maxson, like, you're such a big camper. Why are you telling people, like, how to counter campers? Because the reason I'm saying this stuff is because it's a lot easier said than done. Like, this is basically, like, you know, like, I can tell you what the skill is and how it's done, but you still have to train and practice to do it. You're not just going to be able to instantly defeat any camper with this. And ultimately, like, if you're another fellow camper watching this, like, it's good for us when other players get better at countering us, because then we learn how to counter their counters, you know, and it sort of becomes this, like, eternal game of one-upping between campers and non-campers. And at the end of the day, like, we want to be, like, the best campers we possibly can be. So playing against other good players will help us with that goal, I guess. Okay, so sorry for the rant, but that's all for this video. Hopefully it helped a bit, and like, you know, helps you sort of picture what you're trying to do with an RPG, so at least you know what you're working towards and vaguely how you can work towards it, I guess. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. If you want further clarification on anything, or just want to like leave a random comment or hate on the video or whatever you want to do, just leave a comment below. I make sure to read all of them, so yeah, I should respond pretty quickly. And thank you all for watching again, and I will see you in the next video.